What's going on, my homies? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am back with the Week 7 Team Builder of GBA Season 9, where your KC Jirachiefs are preparing to take on DeathlyiAm, the coach of the Tennessee Trubbish. So if you haven't already checked out last week's game, make sure to do that. I'll make sure to link that down in the description below. It was a heck of a game against NecroStevo in the Victorian Shadows. Please make sure to go check that out if you haven't already. It really came down to the wire, so that's one you really don't want to miss for sure. So before we jump into this week's Team Builder, make sure to go check out my man Deathly. He'll also be linked down in the description below, and of course his side of the battle is going to also be going up tomorrow along with mine sometime in the afternoon, so just be on the lookout for that as well. And with that said, let's go ahead and take a brief look at the team matchup here. So my man Deathly this season has access to the Kiram White, Gothitelle, Tapu Fini, Volcarona, Nihilego, Mega Aggron, Staraptor, Virizion, Hoopa Unbound, Magnezone, and the Flygon. Now he has a lot of threats on his team. Pretty clearly he has a lot of really powerful offensive threats, and you know there's a lot of pretty dangerous options I have to be prepared for here. Most notably is that Volcarona. I don't know how often he's brought Volcarona this season off the top of my head, but just against my team, Volcarona is just such a huge threat. If it gets up one Quiver Dance against my team, literally one, and he has Stealth Rock on the field, I could be in trouble. It's that simple against my team. I have to be very careful against the Volcarona, basically pressuring it at every single turn if I can, just to prevent it from being able to just straight sweep through my team. So Volcarona is just an enormous threat, and the fact that my Groudon is packing the Drought doesn't exactly help my case for dealing with a Volcarona with stab fire moves. So Volcarona is really like the central focus, in my opinion, for how I'm going to construct this team for this match, just because it matches up so well against mine in general. So I'm just going to have to be really careful about that. But just one other thing to point out on his team too, his team overall is pretty slow, and that's something that I definitely can abuse here with my team matchup. He has, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, kind of looking through his team, I think his fastest Pokemon on his team is Virizion, which is his tier 5, and I know he has not brought Virizion once this season. Granted, Virizion does match up pretty well against my Manaphy if he wanted to use that as his Manaphy check, but I don't think that's a guaranteed bring by any means. And if he doesn't bring the Virizion, his next fastest Pokemon, I believe, is the Nihilego on his team, which is slower than, you know, several members of my team as well. So I really think I have a speed tier advantage in this matchup, which means I can really take a more offensive route to this game and feel pretty comfortable in taking that route, hopefully toward winning this game as well. So that's kind of my general thoughts, just looking at the team preview from I guess a speed tier perspective. But you know, just some other pretty big threats on his team. The Hoopa Unbound, massive threat. Yes, it's a Hoopa, and I know there's a lot of mixed opinions on Hoopa. I personally don't think Hoopa's that great in draft format, but still, it's super strong. I only have a few Dark Resist on my team, so Hyperspace Fury is a very big threat that I have to be prepared for here in this game. As you know, if he can just spam Hyperspace Fury, I might not be able to play around it if I don't construct a proper team. So I do have to be careful around Hoopa. It's also one of his Z captains along with Volcarona, so if he happens to bring Z Hoopa, Z Snatch Hoopa is a very common Hoopa that you might see. That'll give it +2 speed, and it still would be able to change up his moves like it wouldn't be able to do if it had a Choice Scarf. So that's definitely a big threat to be concerned with here in this game. He could just run something like Hyperspace Fury plus maybe Fire Punch and cover, I believe, my entire team for neutral damage. So that's a really big threat to be prepared for as well in this game if I can. Hoopa's one of those mons though, especially if it's more of a setup variant like Trick Room or Z Snatch. If I can just offensively pressure it, it's going to really struggle to find opportunities to set up. Hoopa's definitely much more useful against kind of fatter teams. Like for example, the team I had last season in the GBA with the Mega Venusaur, Celesteela, Seal, all those types of mons, really fat. Hoopa's a lot better against teams like that than it is against teams like my team this season that is pretty much fast, bulky offense as opposed to really fat balance that I had last season. So I'm not necessarily expecting Hoopa to come. I think it definitely can come, and if it does, it's going to be a big threat no matter what. But I think he has some better options against my team, like stuff like the Kieran White, which I haven't even talked about yet, which is, you know, I guess I'm just not as concerned about Kieran White just because of my general team structure, in the sense that a lot of my mons can outspeed it. I know it's very bulky, but if I go 1-for-1 with the Kieran White, losing one Pokemon and then taking it out with the Revenge Killer, I'm going to be happy with that, and I think that's pretty much how it's going to play out in the game as well if I'm bringing more of an offensive team, which is kind of the plan here. But I still need to have ways to switch in to Kieran White in an extreme situation. I don't really have good switch-ins to Kieran White. That's just the nature of the Pokemon that it is. It has Ice Beam, Earth Power, Fusion Flare, all these really powerful moves, Draco Meteor, that can do so much damage against my team, so I'm not going to switch into it easily, but I need to make sure that I can at least switch into it with something if I absolutely have to here in this matchup. But if I had to guess the Pokemon that I'm expecting him to bring in this game, I'm expecting Kieran White, I'm expecting the Tapu Fini just as a good bulky water against my team. People love to bring their bulky waters against me, so I would expect him to try to bring that here in this matchup as well. I'm expecting the Magnezone to come, probably Assault Vest to help him deal with my potential Magearna, maybe even Choppleberry potentially. Then I'm expecting the Mega Aggron to probably come as well to help him out against my Scolipede, which otherwise can kind of mow through his team. Then I don't think I've mentioned it yet, I do expect the Volcarona to come too. The last slot to me really comes down to something like the Gothitelle that he's brought every single game this season, and also the Nihilego is a possibility as like a Stealth Rocker, maybe Toxic Spikes user if he wants to take that route. And again, the Hoopa Unbound is something that could come too. Virizion is a possibility. I don't think it's going to come, but those first five that I mentioned, I really do expect to come here in this matchup. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and hop on over to the team here that I'm trying to bring this week against Deathly. Kicking this off with the Magearna. This is a set that I think can just mow right through his team if I play it correctly and set up on the right Pokemon. Shift Gear plus Aura Sphere plus Flash Cannon hits his entire team neutrally, hits most of his team super effectively actually, and when I couple that with Hidden Power Rock and an Expert Belt for the Volcarona, that just makes this an absolutely enormous threat. If I'm able to get a +1 special attack boost from my Soul Heart by knocking out something like Magnezone or Mega Aggron with this Magearna, which I do expect one of those two to probably be his initial switch into this, or maybe just use those two in general as setup fodder for this if I want, then I should be able to knock those out with Aura Sphere, get a +1 with my Soul Heart, and when I have that boost, nothing on his team wants to deal with this Pokemon at all. The one thing that might be able to deal with it is something like the Gothitelle, because I'm not bringing any coverage for that, but if he does decide to go into Gothitelle, Flash Cannon is still going to do a lot of damage with my Modest Nature and 108 special attack EVs to the point where it's not going to really appreciate dealing with Magearna whatsoever. Even if it's like a fat Calm Mind set, I should be able to just spam Flash Cannon against something like that and deal with it pretty well. And if he wastes a turn going for like Trick, if he's a Trick Gothitelle set, then he's going to take a ton of damage from a Flash Cannon in that situation too, and probably not be able to win that exchange 1v1. So Magearna just really good win condition against his team. It's definitely something I plan to hold close to my chest until late in the game, basically as my fail-safe win condition in the late game. That is unless he brings the Nihilego. If he brings the Nihilego, I'm going to have to use this thing a little bit more earlier on in the game, just because this is my best switch in on my team into Nihilego's dual stabs. Power Gem, Sludge Wave, both pretty powerful coverage options on his team, so I would need this to be able to switch into those, and if that's the case, I can easily just go for something like a Flash Cannon or even a Shift Gear early on in the game after he brings in the Nihilego, but I'm going to try to avoid that situation if I can, just because I think I'm pretty easily trapped by Gothitelle if he brings Gothitelle, if I don't have a boost up from my Soul Heart yet, so I'm going to have to play around that pretty carefully, but even so, I really think this has a lot of potential as a win con here in this game. I guess just one brief note, Expert Belt was the item of choice because it does allow me to knock out the expected Volcarona set after one Spike, which will be provided by my Scolipede. So Scolipede coming in this week for the first time in a while. There were a lot of matchups where I could have probably brought Scolipede here over my past several weeks, and I just opted against it in favor of using more members of my team. But even so, Scolipede once again matched up really well here. I decided to actually bring it this time around with the Fightinium Z plus Superpower. That combination combination, providing a very powerful fighting attack to hit something like the Magna Zone, to hit something like the Kirim White, and most specifically to hit the Mega Aggron for as much damage as possible. But it's actually kind of laughable how little Z Superpower does to Mega Aggron. Just go run the calc for yourself if you want to see it. It does under half to Mega Aggron without even having defense investment on it. That thing is so fat with the filter ability, but even so, just having something like Z Superpower to hit the Mega Aggron a little bit harder could definitely come in handy for later on in the game, as getting that thing weakened is really important, I feel, for stuff like my Mega Aerodactyl, or vice versa. Mega Aerodactyl can weaken for Scolipede, or even maybe Groudon can weaken for Scolipede and vice versa later on in the game as well. So Z Superpower is nice for that. Dual Stab, Poison Jab, Mega Horn, just really good coverage against his team. Hits everything neutrally in combination with Superpower for his Steel types. And then of course I have the Spikes to help aid my Magearna trying to win later on in the game. Although honestly, Scolipede could possibly win as well, just based upon how the game plays out, what Deathly decides to preserve and sack throughout the game. So yep, that is the Scolipede. Pretty straightforward, just a really good offensive option against his team, and sets the Spikes that'll help the rest of my team do their job. But we are bringing not only Spikes, we are bringing Hazard Stack this week with the Aerodactyl, Mega Aerodactyl that is, with the Stealth Rock, Rock Slide, Fire Fang, and the Taunt. Taunt is specifically there to make sure Gothitelle cannot trap me for free. I could easily see him bringing something like a fat Gothitelle that doesn't even have a choice item. Maybe just something like Rest, Calm Mind, Toxic, Psychic, something like that would be a set that's pretty effective against my team, and this Aerodactyl will make sure that type of set can't actually trap and deal with me indefinitely. It'll still be able to trap me, it'll still knock me out eventually, but it's not going to be able to basically survive that process in as healthy of a manner as it would have been able to if I didn't have Taunt. So that's the main reason for Taunt, honestly. There's not really another reason why I would want it, unless, you know, maybe it's a late game situation against Volcarona and I'd rather Taunt instead of risking a Rock Slide miss. That's definitely a situation that could come up as well. But otherwise, we're going to try to hit our Rock Slide against Volcarona. We do have a ton of special defense and HP investment. This investment does allow me to survive a +1 Timid, Life Orb, Hidden Power Ice from the Volcarona, just in case he's able to get up a free +1 against my team. I felt that was a really important benchmark to be able to hit. I would have liked to hit Modest +1 if I could. I am able to take that without Stealth Rock on the field, but I think Timid is more likely, and I didn't really want to sacrifice the speed that I would have to sacrifice to be able to hit that benchmark from the Volcarona. So pretty fat Spadef Mega Aerodactyl this week. The Rock Slide, Fire Fang hit his entire team neutrally, and yeah, Stealth Rock just really good against him in general. So that is the Mega Arrow. Hopefully this will help prevent me from losing to the Volcarona this week, at least in the case where he doesn't have Stealth Rock up yet against my team. Z-move Volcarona is still potentially a problem. A Z-move Volcarona can knock out my Mega Aerodactyl after Stealth Rock, so I do need to keep that in mind for sure here in this game. Hopefully I won't have to deal with that specific type of situation. I'm going to try my best to play around that specific situation, but you know, it's just something I have to have in the back of my mind. But now next up is a Pokemon we haven't brought all season. We are bringing the Mismagius this week. Now Mismagius has a really niche speed tier against his team. Base 105 is super nice. I liked it better than Mew in this matchup because of that speed tier and because of the fact that Deathly only has, I believe, 1 resist to Ghost on his entire team. He doesn't have a Dark type if I remember correctly, and if I'm wrong on that, I'm sorry, but just off the top of my head, I don't think he had a Dark type. His only Ghost resist was the Staraptor, which obviously doesn't appreciate Power Gem or Thunderbolt, so right away Mismagius looked really good in this matchup, especially because of its speed tier as well, and its plethora of coverage options too. Just combination Shadow Ball, Power Gem, Thunderbolt, Dazzling Gleam, hits everything really, really hard. I wanted to bring Hidden Power Ground. If I could have had a 5th move slot, I would have brought Hidden Power Ground as well for Nihilego and Magnezone, but even so, Shadow Ball does a lot to both of those Pokemon as well, and yeah, this coverage is incredible against him. So the choice really then came between something like a Life Orb to break through his team as well as possible, or an Assault Vest to help me take hits from Kirim White, which is probably going to be special, to help me take hits from stuff like the Volcarona, which is going to be special, stuff like the Magnezone, again, going to be special, Nihilego going to be special. There's a lot of special attackers on his team, so Assault Vest made a lot of sense on the Mismagius in this matchup, and while I do lose out on some power that I would have otherwise had with the Life Orb, I think Assault Vest is definitely the way to go here with Mismagius in this matchup. It's able to survive longer, do more damage overall, and also take hits from Tapu Fini really well too, as this is going to be one of my ways to help me break down that as well. So that is the Mismagius. Pretty straightforward sets. Just threw on an Assault Vest to help me take hits a little bit better, and I expect this thing to put in some good work here in this matchup for sure. Glad we're finally going to be able to bring the Mismagius here in this game. Now next up is the Groudon. This is a Choice Scarfed Groudon. I don't think I've brought Choice Scarfed Groudon yet this season, but I wanted to have an additional way to be able to outspeed or check the Scarfed Hoopa potential that he could bring against my team. This also, the speed tier, the power, the damage output from Groudon with the Choice Scarf is ridiculous against this team, as he only has 2 resists to ground, I believe, on his entire team, those being the Flygon and the Staraptor. I don't think Flygon comes, I don't think Staraptor comes either, so most likely he's not going to have a ground resist on his team is what I'm saying. And if that's the case, then Groudon is going to be able to put in the finest of work here in this matchup for sure. I have Earthquake and Precipice Blades just in case I don't want to risk a miss. I have the Earthquake option if I need a little extra damage output to knock out something like the Volcarona or the Tapu Fini, then I do have the Precipice Blades for that as well. Might even need that from the Mega Aggron considering how fat that is as well. So then I also have the Fire Punch for the Virizion. It gives me a good offensive check to Virizion on the off chance that he opts to bring that. I do have a couple other offensive checks for that too, but it's always nice to have, I guess that's a ground resist as well, but regardless, I don't really expect that to come. Even so, having Fire Punch is nice to be able to deal with that, and then the Dragon Claw specifically for the Flygon, in case he opts to try to bring that, as that's one of the few Pokemon that can actually resist Edgequake plus Fire Punch, which is the most common coverage you find on a Groudon. So Dragon Claw is nice for that, and the nice thing about that too is despite the fact that he has Misty Terrain, it's actually not going to weaken my Dragon Claw's power when I attack the Flygon as it's off the ground. So that's pretty nice too. And it's also, I guess, nice to have Dragon Claw for the Kyurem White potentially, as I could see a situation where I might want to click Dragon Claw against that. It's pretty unlikely. I'm probably always going to be clicking Precipice Blades or Earthquake realistically, but it's nice to just have that option too. So just a really good kind of a backup win condition against his team, especially with all the hazards on the field. I feel like this could be really good against him in the late game. If he lets me chip down some of his Mons, then this thing definitely could become the primary win condition in the case where maybe Magearna struggles to find setup opportunities against his team. So that is the Groudon, and then finally we have the Manaphy. This was kind of the last Mon on the team I was trying to fit in there. There were a few options I was thinking about. Stuff like Incineroar made a lot of sense in this matchup too, potentially, but opted against that in favor of this Manaphy set. So this thing is pretty interesting. It's designed to be able to switch into the Kyurem White at least once. I don't appreciate taking a Draco Meteor, a Life Orb Draco Meteor after rocks. Hopefully I don't have to deal with that situation, but if that's a situation that arises, I probably just have to sack a Pokemon. But regardless, this thing should be able to switch into anything else that's not a Life Orb Draco Meteor or Specs Draco Meteor from Kyurem White, if I absolutely need to, in addition to being a good way of getting rid of the leftovers on the Tapu Fini, just to make sure I can wear that thing down over time without it just recovering all of its health back gradually through its leftovers that it undoubtedly is going to be bringing here in this week. And yeah, so combination Scald, Dazzling Gleam, just really good against this team. I'm probably going to lead off with Manaphy in this game, just because I don't really expect him to lead the Tapu Fini. I think he'll lead off with a Stealth Rocker against my team, specifically the Mega Aggron, which I do expect to come. And if he does that, I might be able to get some pretty free Scald chip damage off on that, which of course will help out my Scolipede and my Groudon later on in the game with trying to win. It might also help my Magearna with trying to set up on the Aggron later on in the game as well. So also packing the U-Turn on this set, it helps out against the Hoopa Unbound if he is not a Choice Scarf variant. U-Turn just a super good move against teams that have a Hoopa U on them. And then I also have the U-Turn for the Gothitelle just to make sure that I'm not able to be easily trapped by that as well. So really what you should see across every member of my team, maybe besides the Magearna, is that it's pretty hard for the Gothitelle to be able to trap me as well. And because he's brought Gothitelle pretty much every single week this season, I think every single week this season, just wanted to make sure that my team was adequately prepared for that option from him as well. So yep, so that is the team for this week. Pretty solid overall, I think. However, this is a bit of a rushed build as well, just from the standpoint of actually been out of town all week in Chicago for like a business trip throughout this week. So I kind of threw this together here the morning before the game. So hopefully this doesn't come back to bite me in the butt. But I feel like the team is pretty good overall. I feel like it covers all of its bases, and most importantly, we're able to use a new Pokemon this week in the Mismagius. So you know, I think the team is pretty solid. Hopefully the Magearna can come in clutch, maybe even the Groudon, maybe even the Scolipede. All of those looking like really good potential win cons in this game, but we'll just have to see what he decides to bring. So make sure to check out the battle coming out tomorrow afternoon. Don't know what time quite yet, but of course it'll come out in the afternoon as per the usual. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. Make sure again to go check out my man Deathlyi's channel as well as his side of the battle whenever that comes out as well. And with that said, I think we are about done here. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.